Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in. It's a full court press, broadcasting live from our Southern Command here in beautiful, hot Las Vegas. Eric Franson, Jason Walker on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, streaming on 1069thefan.com and the 1069 The Fan mobile app, and on YouTube, The Fan KLGN on YouTube. We've got it set up today where, fingers crossed, we have a better, more secure solution than what we had yesterday. We made it work. Thanks to Dallin Dacus and Will Philwright for helping us get through things yesterday and getting us set up today. But a lot of things to get through today. When we did our show yesterday, we didn't know who Utah State would face. We had an idea. Nevada was leading.
Yeah, by the very end, we were starting to be pretty sure. But
they were able to stay ahead and play from ahead, but it was still anybody's game. But now we know definitively who Utah State plays today. We know the Final Four, the semifinals in the Mountain West Conference. We'll break that down, what happened last night, what's going to be on tap today, who we would rather face in the next round. We're going to be positive and assume Utah State can get this done against Nevada, but we'll break down Nevada as well. And then a coaching change that we've been worried about that just happened and could be challenge for Utah State to keep Calhoun. Some of these, Kansas State was an opening, but looks like that's been cleared off the board. But another opening just became available that has always had me worried with Coach Calhoun. So we'll explain that a little bit later on as well. But, Jason, let's first talk about what happened last night in the Mountain West Conference Tournament. While we were on the air, Grand Canyon and Nevada were playing each other. Grand Canyon opened up, had a good, strong first half. They had a double-digit lead at halftime, and then Nevada comes out and they go on a run to get things started in the second half, take control. It's back and forth, ties, lead changes, back and forth and back and forth. And then Nevada just slowly creeps away, and they're able to maintain about a 5 to 7 point lead for about the second half of the second half. And they hang on and win. They got the upset game and beat, not a big upset, number 5 over number 4, but they got the win and they advance. So the Wolfpack will face the Aggies later on tonight.
Yeah, and it should be a good one. And looking at the game last night, it was a close competitive game. And in that respect, you had to like what you saw for the most part. But in another respect, that game was a crime against the sport of basketball. And it wasn't the fault of either of the teams playing. I say that with full respect for the ability and capability of Nevada and Grand Canyon. Eric, there were 86 free throws in this game, and I believe it was the Grand Canyon. It was either their play-by-play guy or their play-by-play or their analyst. I believe his name was Paul. Forgive me if I'm misremembering your name, but it was him who put out the stat saying that there were some 1,500 Division I games that were excluding overtime, and out of all of those non-overtime games, this was the only one this season where both teams shot 40-plus free throws.
Absurd.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. I don't care who's playing. They are not actually committing that many fouls. They're just not. These are Division I basketball players who are talented, who know how to play basketball, who know how to play defense. And you compare it to the Big Ten, and they're committing the average fouls called is 10 fouls less per game in the Big Ten. And I know, if you play at lower levels, people tend to foul more because fouling tends to be a product of not great defense, but they're not that untalented that it's going to be 10 fouls per game. At that point, it's the talent of the officials and their ability to, again, I say this all the time, it's their inability to discern the difference between contact and illegal contact.
Right.
If they see contact, then they're just calling a foul. If they don't know how to process the contact that happens between two players, they call a foul. And that's why it can be annoying to watch some Mountain West games, as exciting as they are, because when you watch the NBA, for as much as fans complain about the NBA, they are so much better than college referees. I'll watch an NBA game and be like, how is there not a foul called? And I'm saying that almost thankfully because I'm used to watching Mountain West refs who, if there's any sort of contact in the paint, there's 3 whistles going off. But in the NBA, they play defense, and the referees know how to let them play defense, unless they're defending Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Then that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, free throw merchant.
But then this happens in the NCAA tournament and in the bigger conferences where we see this every year. Utah State can't play defense. They commit a bunch of fouls. And then on offense, they kind of get used to being, having those fouls called. They get to the NCAA tournament, and the referees swallow their whistle. And it's just something that happens over and over and over again. I know I've completely taken over the show with my rant here from the get-go. But it's just something that I felt like had to be said, is that you had what would otherwise have been an elite game, and it wasn't completely ruined, but it certainly didn't make that game more entertaining to see it become a free throw fest at the end.
Well, it was a lot of free throws in that game, but it was the epitome of what has been going on in the Mountain West Conference tournament, period. This was Chris Ello put this out earlier. I believe he follows San Diego, but this was in Friday's games. There were 173 fouls called total. That's more than 43 per game. And the Big Ten, there were 122 fouls in 4 games. In the Big East, 130. In the Big 12, 137. 138 in the ACC. SEC had 147. But that's an average of 33, almost 34 fouls per game. In the Mountain West, 173.
Yeah, it's
just ridiculous.
It's unacceptable.
And what we saw in the Utah State UNLV game, I mean, yeah, there were a lot of fouls, but it was a chippy game. It was a physical game. But then on top of that, they went to the review so many times.
Yeah.
And that really disrupts flow and momentum. I mean, there were ample times for Utah State to lose its momentum because of reviews and free throws that were going on. But that game between Nevada and Grand Canyon was just like, that is like the golden child of calling fouls and sending teams to the free throw line.
And it was way worse. And by comparison, Utah State and UNLV doesn't look too bad. Where there was, there were 51 fouls called. There were 8 more fouls called in the Nevada Grand Canyon game. And I get that part of the free throws at the end, at least for Nevada, there were some take fouls at the end. Tack on about 7 or 8 fouls, but if you give them that allowance, Nevada is still shooting 38 free throws at least, and maybe still 40 plus if you remove take fouls from the conversation. And that's just not basketball.
No.
It's just not.
No.
And Grand Canyon shot 41 without shooting any take fouls at the end. So that just becomes annoying, and it makes you worry, about how this next round is going to go, because I don't know if it's going to be the exact same rest, but these are supposed to be the best of the best referees that the Mountain West has to offer. You bring the best referees to come, officiate your, conference tournament. I know there's a lot of games going on elsewhere, so it's not like you're going to get the top of the line, because there are other places for some of these referees to be.
Yeah.
But at least get the best that you absolutely can, and I don't know if we're necessarily getting that. Now, it's something that affects both sides, so it's not like it's this, advantage to either team. It's just random variance, who has fewer calls that necessarily go against them, but it can lower the entertainment value. It can make it more frustrating for fans when they're watching, and then it creates resentment, because when you're a fan, naturally you're only going to think of the ones that screwed your team over. And so both sides end up feeling like their team has been hurt. Then there's the gambling side of thing, but I don't care how they feel. So
yeah, really frustrating, and it affects both teams equally, but certainly if one team has better free throw shooters than the other, then there's an advantage. But you're right, it's unwatchable. It's not fun, it's not entertaining. Nobody wanted to come watch a free throw fest. They want to see the players play. They want to see them make plays on the court, have the game decided by how they're running an offensive set or a defensive set, and let the players and the coaches really determine through their play on the court how they're going to win, how that team's going to win and advance, not just who's better at the free throw line when nobody's guarding them.
Yeah, we want to see the big shots. We want to see the big defensive plays. You look at the end of the Wyoming UNLV game, where there were several, maybe I shouldn't use that because there was a foul that ended up determining that game to a degree. Because Kamani Hamilton, UNLV calls an isolation play for Hamilton. Have him do what he does best: isolate on the wing, back down, roll toward the middle of the paint, and do a pull-up shot. That's a shot that he's good at. You want to call your best shots for your best players. He shoots a shot, and the defense is clean, but the referees call a foul. And, the shot went in, tied the game, foul gives them the lead. The next play, there wasn't any referee shenanigans there. Tyron Jones makes an excellent block. So, that's the play we wanted to see. Remove the and one from Hamilton's, play there, tie game. Tyron Jones makes a game-saving block. You maybe go to overtime. That's the kind of thing we see, but you add a little bit of ref ball in there, and you remove some of the player agency where otherwise there were fantastic plays made, largely by UNLV. They got the big block, the big shot, but the fact that Hamilton was able to put his team up by one probably impacted the way Wyoming at least felt on that last possession. There's more pressure. If it's a tie ball game, they're not nearly as pressured to get that kind of shot off.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to, worry about, if we miss, then we lose. It's just all right, if we miss, worst happens, we go to overtime.
Right.
So that's something where you don't want referees to add flavor to the game. You want them to just officiate the game.
Right. They don't need to be part of it. It's not about them, but they need to make sure that, guys aren't taking each other's heads off.
Yeah, they were trying, with Utah State UNLV, they were trying to manage that game. And it got chippy, and the referees, as much as they kind of called them out for the double technicals, which I kind of hate that they throw out there, that's a game-managing tool. And that's what I felt like. The referees for Utah State UNLV weren't really that bad. They probably called a few more fouls than I would have liked and were a little inconsistent, but they were fine. And they did their jobs well enough that I didn't consider the referees to be any factor or any, of any relevance to the game as far as how the game went. And so in that case, Utah State and UNLV were blessed with good enough refs that it wasn't a factor. They were able to go out there and make the plays. And, the only way the refs impacted the game is that they called 5 fouls on 2 different UNLV players. But
yeah,
that's just the way they called a bunch of fouls, and that's just how, because Utah State were called for almost as many fouls. They just, that's where having depth helps a little bit.
So it was a bit of a challenge for us to watch a lot of that Nevada Grand Canyon game. You were doing post-game press conference stuff.
Yeah.
I was trying to do a live show. So we were box score watching it as we went. But we were able to kind of keep an eye on things. But this is a Nevada team that was able to beat a good Grand Canyon basketball team. These two teams met each other only once in the regular season. Nevada won that game. It's kind of a fluke. Grand Canyon probably should have won that game if they mind their business and know how to inbound a ball and get it across half court. They take care of business and no problem at all. But they had a mental block in the closing minute of that one and they lose. And the one they played last night was close too. But Nevada gets the win. And this Nevada team has a couple different guys who can score. There's some guys who are going to be a challenge for the Aggies tonight. Corey Campert Jr., he's a great scorer. He had 27 last night. Von Weems, he had 16. He's had games over the season where he's scored a ton, and he's led the team in scoring. Elijah Price was not as big scoring impact in the game, but he had 6 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. So what didn't he do? Maybe not score into double figures, but this was a pretty balanced Nevada team. Yes, a lot of it was on Corey Camper Jr., who led the team and got the bulk of scoring for them. But there were a lot of guys who contributed, and to some degree kind of reminds me of what Utah State did to UNLV yesterday, where they went deep. A lot of guys contributed, helped get them the win. Nevada leaned on their depth, and they had, 11 guys play. And they had a bunch of guys come off the bench. Some of these guys are only for a few minutes here or there, but they were finding ways to give breaks to some of their other guys so they could be competitive when they face the Aggies tonight.
Yeah, that's a big key. You don't have to get, 11-plus minutes out of a bench guy to be effective. They get, 3 minutes out of Peyton White and 5 minutes out of Coleman, 4 minutes out of Amir Robinson. So you combine all that together, and that's essentially kind of one player playing a decent, amount of rotation minutes where, Arma trading at 19, Bailey at 11, Rollison 23. Like if you add up the other three guys, that's essentially, a ninth guy playing, 10 plus minutes.
Yeah.
But it's spread out among a different positions. And at the very least, like if you can get a couple of 2-minute stints where you can get Von Weems off the floor to get him some rest, in a tournament where, you're playing, 3-4 games in a row. In Nevada, they got to go 4 for 4. They got to get a Wendy's combo special here if they want to win it all. So they need is, being able to have Elijah Price. He got in foul trouble. That's part of why he only plays 21 minutes. So, like, when he has to be off the court, whether you want him to be or not, like, UNLV, they couldn't take Hamilton off the court because they just couldn't afford to have him not on the court. So they leave him on there, and he just keeps stacking fouls, and he fouls out with 9 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Because he just ran out of, ran out of fouls to give.
Yeah.
And so UNLV just could not put anybody else in, and, so they had to sub him out and Fleming out, involuntarily, and they just run out of guys that are effective out there on the court. If you're running such a thin rotation, it's because you do not have the guys to, at the very least, pull their weight. Because you don't need to have like a spectacular bench that can do as well or better than your starters. You bring in guys who can hold down the court and make plays until your starters can come back in and do the things that are the reason why they're starters.
Right.
So Nevada's got the guys to be able to do that. If Elijah Price has to sit where, he had to sit for a lot of the first half, and he's able to come back in and have that second half impact that, is the reason why he's an all Mountain West caliber player, that's where you're able to survive the end of the first half where they were only down by 6. They got from double digit, deficit to down by 6 with Elijah Price not on the court. So if you're able to do that and then Price comes back in and that's, you have your star on the court for most of the second half, you can outscore them by 10 in the second. So that's something that can make Nevada dangerous is they have more depth than, especially UNLV, but they have, one of the better deep benches among the teams in the Mountain West.
Yeah, so we know Utah State will face Nevada. These two teams split their regular season. Utah State winning their game in Logan, but Nevada beating the Aggies in Reno when Utah State was ranked for a hot minute.
Were they ranked at that point?
Oh, actually, sorry. The Aggies beat Nevada when they were ranked.
Yeah.
But that was 71-62, a low-scoring game in that one. But then the game in Reno, it's a close contest. It was kind of back and forth, but then Nevada was pretty much in control. And a desperation 3 by Mason Falslev in the corner makes it look like it's a closer game than it kind of was. But still, these two teams, played pretty close games in their 2 games that they met, splitting with each home game or home team winning at home. And we'll look at the matchups here a little bit more, look at lessons learned from the 2 games that these 2 teams faced each other. Love to get your thoughts on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line. You can text in 435-339-0321. How are you feeling about this game tonight, Utah State and Nevada? I think it's generally the team that we wanted Utah State to face in this matchup.
Slightly more than Grand Canyon.
So how are you feeling about this? And we talked yesterday about the X factor for Utah State against UNLV. Who needs to be the X factor tonight for the Aggies against Nevada? So quick timeout. We'll be right back here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, The Fan. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker, live from our Southern Command in Las Vegas.
We call this Fan Studio South because we got Spectrum South.
That's right.
And Thomas and Mac. This is our KLGN Studio South.
Fan on wheels.
Fan on wheels.
Yeah, not quite the same as Spectrum on wheels.
Fan on hotel room table, more like.
Yeah, that's right. Before we continue talking about Utah State and Nevada, just a reminder about the Best of Northern Utah contest. Voting is now underway. It started on Wednesday. It will continue until March 25th, and that's where you can really let your voice be heard about the businesses that you appreciate the most, your favorite restaurant, your favorite local shop. Maybe it's about someone that provides great services and care. So you can go to bestofnorthernutah.com and vote on more than 200 different categories. You can vote for all the different categories you want once per day, and make sure you do that until March 25th. Show some love to those businesses that make Northern Utah special. Cast your vote today at bestofnorthernutah.com.
So looking at the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, if you want to join in on any of the topics, 435-339-0321. If you're watching on YouTube, it's just written there on the screen there. 5338 sending in this text saying, I believe the UNLV player's full name is Dr. Dre Gibbs Lawhorn.
Doctor.
I'll tell you, that reminds me of
Dr. Dre Gibbs.
It reminds me of something I was looking at last night where I was looking at, Eric Hout. We haven't mentioned him, where he's, the head coach of Tarleton State. Really fun story with him. But I looked at the press release that Tarleton State put out, and it reminds me of how basically if you see a quote in a press release, there's about an 80 to 90% chance that whatever was quoted isn't either they didn't say it at all or it's been heavily altered. Because I can tell you the truth that when Eric Howell was quoting, he was not saying President Dr. James Hurley. Whereas, that was literally how it was written.
President Hurley.
He said President Hurley all over in the interview.
Yeah.
He referred to him as President Hurley, but President Dr. James T. Hurley or whatever.
Esquire.
Yeah, it's just that's not how people talk.
Yeah.
So it reminded me of that. Obviously, that's just a weird thing that I fixate on that nobody else cares about. But my relationship with how much press releases lie. They're manufacturing those quotes with the consent of the people they are quoting. So
yes,
nothing nefarious is going on. It's just,
I'm going to write this. Are you okay with this quote?
Yeah.
I'm attributing to you.
It's the kind of honorifics, doctors, they always have to call each other doctor. Educators have to call each other professor or differentiate between professor and doctor. All this kind of...
Yeah, who was the AD at Utah who insisted everybody refer to him as doctor?
Yeah, it's that kind of stuff, which, if you earn a doctorate, then you know what? You kind of earned at that point. But my grandpa had a doctorate, and I never knew for the longest time because nobody called him doctor.
By the way, I did talk about the Tarleton State stuff with Coach Eric Hout before you joined me. But what we did not know is how the coaching staff kept that from the players until after the game.
Yeah.
Cool video that they shared when Coach Calhoun and Coach Hout broke the news to the team in the locker room after their win over UNLV. And they didn't want it to be a distraction. They wanted them to focus on that game. But it was fun to watch them celebrate with their coach.
Yeah, so it turns out when they announced the news as the game started, I kind of tweeted out people, obviously fans watching, media and whatnot, they're it was kind of weird they announced it as the game started. That was deliberate timing.
Very intentional.
Because they didn't want the players to know, because at that point the players aren't on their phone, or at least they're not supposed to be on their phone. And so they wouldn't have found out until after the game. And then, that's where Jared Calhoun let Eric Hout announce that. So it was really fun. And obviously the players just going absolutely ballistic, mobbing him and hugging him. That's the kind of brotherhood that you love to see. When people are genuinely happy for others' accomplishments, even though it hurts Utah State. It hurts all those people. They don't have to get to have
losing
Coach
a
Hout.
great coach.
Yeah, but they're happy for someone else's accomplishments, even if it means a parting of ways, and even if they end up facing each other down the line as opponents. So it's fantastic to see that.
8968 on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line saying, let's hope we don't get the same refs tonight.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope we get the slightly better ones. If we had the ones from, the Utah State UNLV game, fine enough for me. More fouls than I'd like, but no shenanigans or ref ball. At least that I noticed.
There were a few, like...
I know the fan who was sitting courtside next to us wasn't happy with some of the calls, but every fan's going to be like that.
There were a few near me as well, but you're at a game, some fans, like, every call the ref makes or doesn't make is bad.
Like, there was ones where, like, I see the play and the fans get upset, and I was like, okay, but that was exactly the right call. Like, I'll see that sometimes.
Well, I mean, certainly there were clearly things that were missed in the Utah State game, like the elbow to the chin of Carson Templin. Thank goodness that got reviewed.
Yeah, they ended up looking at the flagrant, but like because they didn't call that initially, Carson gets called for a foul.
Yeah.
And
so
Hamilton
there was
gets
some
to
weird
shoot free
stuff
throws. So it's just like, what the heck is going on there? 9-3-1-5 on the text line. I want to make sure how many of these are from today?
The job in Cincinnati.
Okay, yeah. Is the job in Cincinnati a stay away due to the prevalence of cancer in that program? The athletic director and other individuals, maybe Cincinnati fans I saw on social media beliefs like cancer's personalities. Is that what you're referring to? I hope you're not referring to. Hopefully, it's not actual cancer.
I doubt it means actual cancer.
Then also saying, Jason, what about the amount of phantom fouls in the Mountain West you see all the time? As in the guy falls down and they just call a foul. Like that's the thing. Like if they can't process, like if a guy fouls down and like happen to be there's some supposed contact, like Boise State I think it was in that Boise State San Diego State like triple overtime game. There was one foul that led to free throws that were obviously crucial in just deciding the flow of that game. I can't remember if it tied to send to another overtime or decided the game, but I think it was on a San Diego State player. I can't remember all the details, but I think it ended up fouling somebody out too. And it was somebody just fell over, but they called a foul on the nearest defender, even though he didn't touch him.
Oh.
So like that's exactly the kind of thing like Mountain West refs, like somebody falls over, like, well, it must be somebody's fault. Or like
someone needs to be to blame.
Or like, whenever there is or a lot of times when there's a potential held ball, the players are going for the ball and they'll get their hands on it, but the referees will just call a foul out of nowhere. Like, out of left field, like, nope, that was a foul. Like, I had two hands on the ball. And it's like, no, it's a foul because you were kind of reaching around him. Doesn't matter that you weren't actually touching him or not any illegal contact. Again, differentiating between contact and illegal contact, but they're just calling a foul. And so if you're going to try and tie up the ball and secure a held ball, you have a 50-50 shot of just being called for a foul because the referee felt like it.
Right, yeah. And sometimes again, they're out of position and they just see arms going in and think, well, he must be grabbing arms, not the ball itself.
And that's where, good referees and mediocre referees, it's the differentiation is the ability to properly discern contact and illegal contact.
San Diego State shot 42 free throws last night. Colorado State shot 13.
Yeah,
it's a massive disparity.
I mean, part of that is because San Diego State actually does know how to defend without fouling. And part of what helps them, though, is that the referees are now trained to, like, there is a kind of confirmation bias that referees will engage in. If they believe you are good defenders.
You're a physical, good defensive team, aggressive, but you're well coached, so.
Yeah, and then it helps you get away.
Slide.
It helps you get away with more if you have that reputation for being a good defensive team. That's why there's some defenders who just, like Drake Allen gets a terrible whistle because they think, oh, this guy's not like the super athletic, great defender, so yeah, he's fouling.
Yeah.
But, players who have better defensive reputations, like Mason Falstaff doesn't get tagged for that many fouls.
Yeah.
Because he has a better, reputation.
Usually, yeah.
So it's something that can help some players and hurts another. Like Tucker Anderson last year, he had the worst foul whistle, one of the worst I've ever seen. Like it's just sometimes that's just how it is. Some players
have the right reputation.
Some players just always get whistled for a foul, even if they are perfectly in defensive position.
There's another text here from 9315. Do they use the same refs in the Mountain West tournament for each game, or do they switch out refs?
They'll have a bunch of different ones because obviously they're not doing back-to-back games.
They wouldn't be doing multiple games during the same day.
Yeah, but like they'll do back-to-back days of still being there and doing games.
Yeah, so you probably have a different set who did a Mountain West game yesterday, but you've also got the WAC that's got their tournament going on at the same time. So I don't know if there's a scheduling agreement with those refs or how that works per se.
A lot of conferences will share referees, and I don't know.
There are fewer games today, so ideally,
so you're trimming down
weeding out some of the worst offenders and getting the best of the best when you get fewer and fewer games.
Yeah, theoretically, that's the general idea.
Yeah, in theory, that's what we'd hope. 6391 texting in, I love that we might have the opportunity to avenge our last 3 losses in this tournament. UNLV, Nevada, and San Diego State.
Yeah, that would be pretty nice for Utah State. Like, being able to, aside from just how sweet it would be for them to, go back to back, or go 2 for 2 in Mountain West championships. But yeah, avenging each of those losses, you get blown out or you lose twice by double digits to UNLV, get that win. Nevada, avenging that, the one time Utah State has lost a clutch game.
Yeah.
Avenge that. And then, we'll see if San Diego State or New Mexico, but it would also be nice to avenge what is probably the second worst loss, at least by margin or kind of overall feeling of the game, that San Diego State loss.
And then 5662 texting in saying the mayor will play another game, Possessed, another revenge game for Mason. Payback for the dirty knee grab that happened in Reno that he's still dealing with today. If the Aggie D shows up and they're focused on the game, they will get the win.
Yeah, and that's been a big key. And I think that's something where the rest help. You know how we have the eternal rest versus rust debate of, and I wrote a Q&A for one of the UNLV outlets where does UNLV benefit from having momentum or does Utah State resting have help? And it's like, sometimes we just have to apply that logic retroactively. And I think what ended up helping the Aggies was very much rest helped them. And UNLV, having run such a thin rotation through the end of the regular season and also having had to play a tight game the day before on a 7-man rotation in that game, they ran out of gas fast at the end of that game.
Yeah.
And it started manifesting in a few more lazy fouls, like not just the ticky-tack ones that the referees were calling because they're the Mountain West refs, but actual we can't play defense anymore type fouls. The type of fouls that Utah State was committing at times in games like against Nevada or against San Diego State or against UNLV. We're just not as focused, not as, well-rested as we would be. And then Utah State in facing UNLV, the most rest they've had between games since December. And what do you know, that was one of their best defensive games since December.
Yeah.
So at least in context, there are probably some better ones outright, like against Colorado State. But that was one of their better defensive performances overall, and they'll need that again today. They're not going to be as well rested, but Nevada has played.
This will be their 3rd game in 3 days.
I was going to say they've played 1.5 games. I don't know if playing Air Force counts as a game.
It's a JV tune-up game.
Yeah, I was in the media room, and the Nevada Air Force game was on, I'll tell you, Air Force is the only team I have only watched one full game of. And even though I was about 150-yard walk from being able to do so, I felt no inclination to go watch Air Force play basketball. I felt, knowing where I usually feel bad if there's a team in the Mountain West I haven't watched as much as I feel like I should have. San Jose was also kind of that. Because Utah State only played San Jose and Air Force once, so obviously those are the teams I didn't see as much, but I at least kind of wanted to watch San Jose sometime, but Air Force did not care to watch. That was again, with the TV on, I was glancing up every now and again, but mostly to be all right, Nevada's up 32-8 now. It's I just felt no inclination to watch that.
Well, in Nevada, they closed out their season playing Air Force.
Yeah.
And then they faced them again in the first round. So they've played quite a few games in the last 7 days, but 2 of those games were cakewalks against Air Force.
Yeah.
They beat them 74-59 at the end of the season, and then 80-45 in their opening round on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So it's putting extra miles on those guys' bodies, but they're not working hard.
Yeah.
They're really not working very hard.
And you got to go really deep into your bench and get those guys and have them be prepared if they need to come in for whatever reason, like against Grand Canyon, where some guys had to come in because of foul trouble, where Armo Trading and Price were getting into foul trouble against the bigs of Grand Canyon. So they've got guys that are ready to roll against Utah State, and despite this being their 3rd game in 3 days, will be more rested than most teams playing their third game in 3 days.
They did have to work hard against Grand Canyon.
They did. They absolutely did.
That's great for Utah State.
Except
they had to work hard.
Except they spent most of their time in that game standing around at the free throw line.
That's true. It's not as hard on the bodies. Real quick, just the other scores. I know we need to hit another timeout here, but we'd mentioned San Diego State took care of Colorado State. Huge free throw disparity there, but the Aztecs get that one 71-62. San Diego State had a 12-point halftime lead. Colorado State tried to cut into it, but Aztecs just maintained their defensive intensity, got that one done. And then San Jose was the surprise of all the games on Wednesday, upsetting Boise State. Wondered how well they could continue on, but they ran out of gas. You talk about a team that doesn't have depth and that struggled with how many games played in a short amount of time. They do not have a deep bench. They used up all their bullets on Boise. And, they tried to maintain it close in the first half.
Yeah.
But New Mexico just hit another gear in that game and totally squashed their hopes.
Yeah, they managed to make a run toward the end of the first half. I think San Jose made it a 5-point game. I was watching that game in my hotel room at the end. And then I was kind of, I think technically I had it on toward the end, but I stopped really paying attention. But yeah, they kind of made it close a few times, but they were entirely dependent on just jacking three-pointers, Colby Garland isolations, where he drives, kicks, someone shoots a three-pointer. And unless they're making them like crazy, like they did in the first half against Utah State or like most of the game against Boise, if they're just not making some teams take a lot of threes and you call them living and dying by the three, but it's like, no, these guys were actually living and dying by the three, and they lived by it on Wednesday and they died by it on Thursday.
Yes, very true. So that set up a high-powered offense against just a brutal defense in New Mexico and San Diego State for the late game tonight. We'll take a timeout here in the Full Court Press. We'll preview the games tonight. We'll focus a little bit more on Utah State and Nevada, and we'll keep talking about the matchups and look at what else is on the docket for this evening. And then which team we might be rooting for, assuming Utah State wins tonight, who we might be rooting for the Aggies to face on Saturday. And if you want to weigh in, always love to hear from you. And for Utah State to get the win tonight, who needs to be the X factor for the Aggies? 435-339-0321 here on the Full Court Press. Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. It's streaming on 1069thefan.com and the 1069 The Fan mobile app. Love to have you along for the ride, and let us know what your thoughts are as we preview Utah State and Nevada, squaring off later on this evening. Pre-game coverage on KVNU Game Day starting at 6:30 with J.D. Walker, Stockton Jukes, and Jalen Moore, and full play-by-play starting at 7:30 with Utah State in Las Vegas at the Thomas and Mack. We know they're going to face off against Nevada, and we'll see what happens with the other game with San Diego State and New Mexico for the later game tonight. I will be interested to see how the dynamics in the arena change tonight because there are a number of fan bases who were eliminated, but how many of them stick around and who do they cheer for? I don't know that there's any opposing fan base like non-Utah State, Nevada, San Diego State, or New Mexico, any of the other fan bases. Who would they be cheering for or against?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be like a significant contingent that's going to make a big difference. To me, the interesting dynamic will come from what new fans show up because it's the weekend now.
Right.
And there are fans who are like, hey, maybe I'll take a quick Friday off or something like that.
Because really nobody was in the upper bowl yesterday. Yeah. But I anticipate tonight it's going to be a pretty full arena.
Yeah, so it's going to be New Mexico fans travel incredibly well. San Diego State fans travel decently well, as do Utah State fans. Nevada fans didn't travel particularly well for the opening rounds, but now that they're in the semifinal and they're playing Utah State and they're looking like a team that could, maybe steal a bit of the NCAA tournament, they all don't live too far. So they could show up in some big numbers now that it's the weekend for them. They don't have to travel 6-7+ hours to get to the arena like basically every other fan base has to. Or how far is Reno from
probably
Vegas?
Is about a 6 or 7 hour
Is that really
drive.
how long it is from Reno?
I'll have to check
I know it's
that
like
out.
I know it's like north central Nevada. Maybe it is. I guess so. we'll have Eric fact check me there. Maybe
Yes.
I'm wrong there, but it's something that I think. Each of the fan bases will likely see an increase. I don't know if any of the fan bases that stick around, all the GCU students, they hopped on their buses and went home. And I don't know if they have any other fans that showed up. They don't have a whole lot of organic fan support that's going to be out this far west. So
it's a 7-hour, 21-minute drive.
So it's basically as long as it is from Logan. So.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll stand corrected in that regards. But still, I think for all of them, you should see an increase there. But yeah, none of the if there are fans that stick around because they made a weekend out of this trip to come watch their team, I don't know if any in particular are going to root for a certain team over any other, because you'll have some that want to root against the team that beat them. There are some that are doing for the good of the conference, but the future conference, the Pac-12 and in the Mountain West.
Yeah.
There are some that might want to cheer for the team that beat them because you want the team that beat you to look good,
ultimately look
to
better,
help you feel better about your loss. So I don't think that there's going to be any fans not of the 4 remaining teams that are going to make a significant impact on not like when you're at an NCAA tournament game and everyone's cheering for the 15 seed.
Yeah.
That kind of situation where everyone in the arena was cheering for, everyone except the New Mexico fans were cheering for San Jose, although because New Mexico fans cheered so well, it kind of was still a home game for them.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, though, that the Grand Canyon fans would be cheering for Nevada.
Oh, yeah. If they stick around.
I think they would be cheering as much for Nevada because that's the team that beat them, but also they're petty enough to cheer against Utah State.
Yeah, but what Grand Canyon fans are sticking around? They bust the students home.
Yeah. I've seen some around town today, but you're right. It won't be the same number there, but there are some people who show up and they make a whole week of it, right? They just love coming to these games. There were a lot of Wyoming people I saw in the arena yesterday. I think they're just there to watch games. I don't know that they have a real rooting interest.
Yeah, well, they get to not be in Laramie, so they get to be in the city for the first time.
Laramie or Las Vegas in March, So I think that when San Diego State and New Mexico fans enter the arena, they will be actively cheering for Nevada. But any other fan bases who may be just hanging out, my guess is they'll also be cheering for Nevada, because that would mean there's going to be an opportunity for somebody else in the Mountain West Conference to go to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the nature of just being the favorite in the conference in any tournament. If you're the favorite, if there is anybody who is not on your side, they're probably against you. Unless you got San Diego State and, Colorado State and Boise State fans who might, want to root for Utah State for the good of the Pac-12 in that sense.
Yeah.
So that's where we have this whole really complicated Game of Thrones style factions within factions.
Layers upon layers.
Yes. It becomes really complicated. We do need to hit another break though really quick. So we'll hit that. We'll come back. We'll wrap up the first hour here on the Full Court Press. We'll try that again. We'll actually go to the proper video feed there.
There we go. Hey, a reminder about friends at Napa Auto Parts. Batteries, headlights, wiper blades, they're all in stock. They're all on sale now at your local Napa Auto Parts store. Plus, as things start to warm up, maybe you want to get the car out in the garage or out of the garage, get it washed in your driveway. Make sure you got the Chemical Guys car wash detailing kits. They're available for only $49.99. Or how about air fresheners and shop towels, Seafoam, and more? It's all available. It's all on sale now at your locally owned Napa store from Preston to Providence. So Utah State Nevada, pregame coverage at 6:30 on our sister station KVNU, and a tip-off at 7:30 Mountain. And then the late game tonight is could be a really interesting one. New Mexico and San Diego State, a late one, but stay up and watch it if you can. That could be really, really fascinating to see how that game plays out.
Especially if Utah State wins, because, I mean, if they lose, I can understand losing interest in the Mountain West tournament, but even if they do lose, and especially if they win, that's going to be a good one. And
that game also is pretty much an NCAA tournament elimination game.
Yep.
Whoever loses that, they're not going to the NCAA tournament.
Yep.
Whomever wins still has some slight hope that they can get there.
Still have the hope alive. And if
they still have to win the tournament, I believe.
Yeah.
But
if it's New Mexico, there is a sliver of a chance. Like the smallest, even my pessimistic, cold, dead heart, nobody except Utah State's getting at large, believes that there is a sliver of a chance. Well, one of them was
it's
on
a quad one win for either,
one
but
of them
New Mexico seems to have the edge.
Well, one of them was on like a dozen brackets on Bracket Matrix earlier today. Maybe I should double check to make sure I'm not mixing them up. One of them was on a few brackets, so maybe one of them might have these slivers of chances. But yeah, I think your point still stands, though. It is a de facto elimination game.
Yeah, New Mexico seems to have a little slight edge. They seem to have a little better metrics than San Diego State does.
Yeah, New Mexico's on 11 brackets, San Diego State's on 6 brackets. So maybe I'll just have to walk that statement back because that's like 1% of brackets, or 10% of brackets.
Not very many. Utah State, they're still on the 8.
Yeah, they're barely on the 8 seed line. We're at the point where it's updated daily and 100-plus brackets pretty much every single day once you get to the afternoon, and they've updated a few more. So, yeah, Utah State, that final 8 seed. Other 8 seeds, Villanova, Georgia, UCLA. The 9 seeds, Ohio State, TCU, Iowa, and St. Louis.
So, I mean, if Utah State plays against Nevada like they did against UNLV and take that also in the championship game, I don't know if they can impress enough people to move up anymore, but we'll have to see. Next hour, we'll get into more about Utah State and Nevada. We'll look at the matchup specifically. Stick around. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Eric Franson, Jason Walker, live from our Southern Command in Las Vegas.
Yep.
Utah State getting ready for the Mountain West semifinal game between the Aggies and the Wolfpack. Utah State versus Nevada, tipping off at 7:30 Mountain. Those down here, 6:30 Pacific. Reminder that KVNU game day coverage will start at 6:30 Mountain Time with J.D. Walker, Stockton Jukes, and Jalen Moore. Getting you ready for a matchup in the third meeting between these two teams, between Utah State and Nevada. And this hour, we'll spend some time breaking that down as well. Also, some coaching news. There's a new coach has been hired at Oregon State. A coach has been let go at Cincinnati. That's one that makes us very nervous.
Yeah.
So we'll explain why. But also like to get your thoughts about the matchup tonight between Utah State and Nevada. And if we have a rooting guide for the later game tonight, San Diego State and New Mexico, is there a matchup that we might prefer, assuming Utah State wins, of course, if they can do that? Is there one of those two teams on the other side that you would rather face on Saturday? And for Utah State, who needs to be an X factor tonight for the Aggies to get that win and secure one more game in the Mountain West Conference Tournament? 435-339-0321. That's the Young Power Sports of Logan text line that you can see on the bottom of the screen if you're watching us on YouTube.
Yeah, watch it on YouTube. Those listening on the traditional radio waves, you got to have a good memory. That's the trick. 435-339-0321. And I guess you want to share a score prediction. We'll take that as well. But 9-1-5 saying Utah State wins by 15.
That's pretty aggressive. Utah State, gosh, if they played like they did yesterday, like, okay.
Yeah,
I'll take that.
They probably win by double digits. 15 if they get the right, take fouls and a couple of made threes in the right direction at the, in garbage time. But
Nevada is a more disciplined team.
Yes.
I think they are a more emotionally mature team.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So I don't know that, Utah State will have some of the advantages that they had against UNLV in those aspects.
And they're, a deeper team just at the very least. You're not playing a 7-man rotation.
Yeah.
You're going to play an 8-man rotation, maybe a 9-man. Again, they might have 2 or 3 players that come in for just a couple of minutes. So it's, 8 players plus a couple of, kind of like how the Aggies are playing, Tucker Anderson, Gary Clark, some days where they technically have 11 players, but
yes,
they're an 8 or 9-man rotation in that same respect.
So Utah State played Nevada twice this past season. Aggies split with the Lobos. They won in Logan earlier in the season. Aggies won that one 71-62, but not that long ago, almost a month ago, February 21st, Nevada beat the Aggies 80-77. So looking at the matchup, Utah State and Nevada, what are some of the keys for Utah State? What have we learned about these two teams and how poorly they match up against each other in what we might see tonight?
Well, I think there's some similarities between the teams. I mean, when the Aggies played Nevada the first time around, I don't believe they had Joel Armo trading healthy. That's their 7-footer or close to 7-footer. Yeah, he did not play in that first game. He was injured for a decent chunk of the season. So the Aggies were able to control the paint really well. And so they didn't allow a ton inside. Nevada actually had just a really tough time inside the paint. The Aggies had what I think is still a season high in blocks. They had 8 blocks. So, Carson Temple got a few of those. Adlan Elamine, I think, also had 3 blocks. So you had Utah State controlling the paint on defense in a way that they haven't really done. Like, not that they haven't been able to defend the paint, but to defend the paint like they did in that game was very unique for them. And so that's where you hold Nevada to 62 points, because while they shot 44% from 3, they only attempted 16 threes all game. If you double your 3-point attempts, cut down on some of those 2-pointers to get blocks, like Nevada could have scored 70, 80 points in that game, where they're good 3-point shooters. But I think what's part of it for Nevada is that they don't shoot bad 3-points or rush 3-point shots. If you force them to shoot a ton of 3-pointers, they'll probably miss a bunch of them, but they're very disciplined in not taking bad 3-pointers. They'll take them when they're open. They only attempted 10 3-pointers against Grand Canyon. They made 4 of them. So they shoot good percentages, but they don't shoot a high volume. And really where they make their money is by getting into the paint. You got guys like Elijah Price, Corey Camper can get inside and hit some shots, inside. Now Joel Armo trading Rollison, like everyone is able to get to the basket, move the ball really well in the paint, dump off passes, kick out, repeated driving kicks. They have a bunch of really good, ball handling guards. They're weirdly kind of short on a true point guard, but all of them can handle the ball pretty much 1 through 5, except for maybe a couple of their bigs. But, Elijah Price, he's one of the guys that can put the ball on the deck and make things happen. Very versatile forward, where he can rebound and move well and score well. So, they can be a tricky team to guard. Although, if Utah State is on its game, it's the type that they should be able to handle because they're not, huge. They do have Armo trading, and he was a problem in that second game. But Utah State shouldn't have much of a problem in terms of capability as far as, are they athletic enough to defend Nevada? It just comes down to focus, discipline, don't foul, or at least don't give Mountain West referees an excuse to call you for a foul. And it's a lot of that. Nevada isn't a matchup problem. Utah State just created problems for themselves when they faced them and allowed those 80 points in what was statistically one of the worst defensive games. I know it wasn't most in terms of points, but in terms of defensive rating, because it was a bit of a slower paced game in that particular game. And so they gave up a lot of points where, there weren't as many possessions to get them, and they didn't really have a way to stop. And that's where Utah State failed in the clutch there. Whereas in other clutch games where they've come up and made big plays on defense, they didn't against Nevada. And that put them in a bind offensively. And while they hit 15 3-pointers in that game, I think it was something we talked about at the time. I think they only made 2 in the final 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, most of that came in the first half.
Yeah, so once what was kind of some ungodly 3-point shooting in the first about 28 minutes of that game, it went away. And you're not going to have that, or at least not likely to have that, 15 made 3-pointers here in the conference tournament, where it can be hard to get your shooting percentages up. A lot of teams struggle to shoot in tournament environments, one, because it's, away from home, and two, again, all these teams are now working on back-to-back, or with Nevada, back-to-back-to-back. So Utah State needs to be able to manufacture points. They did that incredibly well against UNLV. They're going to have to do it against an even better defense in Nevada.
Yeah, this is a Nevada team who has good guards who aren't small. I mean, their good guards are 6'5".
Yeah, they're 6'4",
they got a couple
6'5".
of them, 6'4", 6'5", and so there's a bit of a matchup thing there. But I still like Drake Allen and Mason Falslev and MJ Collins' ability to hang with these guys.
Yeah, they're big enough and athletic enough. It's like when, Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, a big problem with him is his quickness and his ball handling. Utah State has the players who can defend him. You could tell he really struggled to get around them. He did it a couple of times, but it was only a couple of times Utah State was able to handle him. Once Jake Hall, he went off, early in that game, but that was just because they kept getting lost on him. Once they focused on him, he couldn't do a dadgum thing.
Yep.
And so guys like Corey Camper and Rollison, if Utah State is on point and not getting lost in the scouting in terms of scouting, these guys aren't matchup problems. It's why guys like Jaden Henley and Kamani Hamilton and Tyron Jones have scared me more, at least on behalf of the Aggies, than any other player, because Utah State doesn't necessarily have a defender or multiple defenders that can handle those guys, although they proved to be capable, yesterday, guys like Carson Templin and Zach Keller and Adlon Elmine and Tucker Anderson, they turned out to be more capable than I'd given them credit for, and so they deserve credit for that defending. But, at this point, it just comes down to focus and discipline, and at this point, when everyone's tired, just will to keep on going. Because, it's not about capability. It's the stuff, above the shoulders, your brain, your focus, and your will to keep going. Because Nevada, while they have good players and good players kind of inherently can create matchup problems, they aren't a walking mismatch for the Aggies in the way that again, UNLV was at times, the way Grand Canyon manifested a couple of times. And in San Diego State, at least in one of the games, was showed a bit of a matchup problem. Like, the Aggies have the players to match up and defend anyone on Nevada. It's just going to come down to whether or not you want it more. As much as I kind of hate that cliche sometimes, because everyone wants it, but you gotta manifest wanting it more by how you prepare and how you approach the game, and not just trusting that your athleticism will keep you in front of them.
Yeah. So the combination of Adlin Elamine, Tucker Anderson, Carson Templin, Gary Clark, and Zach Keller, like the combination of Utah State's 6'8" above players, like if they have a game like they had yesterday, Aggies will be fine.
Yeah.
Because that's sometimes where Utah State has struggled against teams that have dynamic players and those positions with that size. Elijah Price is 6'9". Armo Trading, he's 6'10".
He's 6'10".
So if those two guys have good games, those are where Utah State has been a little bit prone in the past.
Yeah.
But I really like how Tucker has emerged. He's playing with more confidence. Coaches have confidence in him. Adlin is, still going through something with his offense, but he's still active out there. And I thought he still played a pretty solid game yesterday. So if Utah State has those guys still playing active and helping the team at least at minimum defensively, Utah State should still be okay in this game tomorrow or tonight. It's tonight.
Yeah, it's happening tonight, Eric. We're going to the arena tonight after we finish the show.
We hope we're talking about a different game tomorrow.
Yeah, that'll be nice tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, because like with Nevada, they don't present a ton of length. Like the reason Elijah Price is good isn't because he's 6'9", although that helps. It's how savvy he is. I mean, for a sophomore, it's crazy how.
Yes.
Like the other day
I have to remind myself he's only a sophomore.
Yeah, like I had that exact same thing. I was like, wait a minute, Elijah's only a sophomore. Like, dang, he doesn't play like a sophomore.
Yeah, that's just
so
crazy.
it's crazy, how good he can be, because he ranks decently well nationally in offensive rebounding percentage. He's in the top 300 there, as a small forward, power forward, where typically those offensive rebounding guys are your 7 plus footers. He and Adlin Elamine both have the same height. Carson Templin is similar in height, weight, and wingspan as well. So it's not that Nevada has this length that the Aggies can't handle, because you look at them position by position, and the Aggies, you can argue, have an advantage in the end. Because, they're going to have guys like, they're going to have 6'5" guys on the wing, but the Aggies have 6'4" guys on the wings and a 6'5" point guard. And, Nevada's going to start a 6'9" guy at power forward, but the Aggies are going to start a 6'9" guy at power forward. And you got Armo Trading, who's 6'10" and 240. Well, the Aggies got Zach Keller, who's 6'10", 235, 240 pounds. Like, the height matches up. And so that's not going to be the thing that is going to determine things in this game. And heck, UNLV doesn't even have that much length. The problem with them was the athleticism of the guys they had with that length. Nevada doesn't, Elijah Price and Armo Trading are not as athletic as Tyron Jones and Kamani Hamilton.
No.
That was the problem those guys presented. But these guys have a little bit more length. In some cases, a little more bulk might be what hurts. But the Aggies need to be able to make things happen inside the paint when Elijah Price is in there. Because Elijah Price, he gets a lot of blocks. Armo Trading, he got a lot of blocks against the Aggies in the second game when he was playing, or at least had an impact on rim protection, even though I don't know if he actually got a ton of blocks, but there were so many times when the Aggies got into the paint and they got scared because they saw, a 6'10", 240-pound guy in the paint, and they didn't shoot the shot, or they missed the shot. And the Aggies shot incredibly poorly. I think it was their worst, or one of their worst, 2-point field goal percentages of the season. And so they need to be able to make things happen inside the paint on offense, as well as not allow guys like Elijah Price and all these other players who, again, Nevada has specialized in scoring inside the paint. You got to be able to stop them there.
Yeah, last time these two teams met, Mason Falslev only had 10 points. And remember, we talked about this earlier, he had kind of a desperation 3 near the end of the game that even got him to double digits. I don't suspect Mason Falslev will only be held to 10 points tonight.
Yeah, I think he's going to be a lot more aggressive.
Adlin Elamine played 25 minutes, but did not get a single point. Tucker Anderson didn't play at all. So I would suspect that between those three guys, you're going to get more of an offensive outcome. Besides other players, I mean, MJ Collins was held to only 9 points. Drake Allen had a great game. Of course, this was when he was becoming a father, and there was a lot of emotional stuff going on with him, and thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because without that, this could have been a bad loss for Utah State. Not just a close one, but a bad one. This could have been decided by double digits had not Drake Allen played like he did. But I don't suspect Utah State will have another bad game like that. I think what we've seen is that UNLV notwithstanding, every other game following a loss, the next time Utah State faces their opponent, they come out playing really, really well against that opponent. Jared Calhoun and his staff, they have long memories. They do not forget what happened the last time the teams faced each other and lost, and why. They usually come out with a really good game plan and take care of business in a really strong way against their opponents who bested them the last time they played them.
Yeah, and we've seen games where Utah State was bested in the paint. Like, Grand Canyon intimidated the crap out of Utah State in the paint first time they played each other. Utah State couldn't hit any shots. Then, in the second game, they were way better at getting shots in the paint. UNLV once or twice, really, especially in the second game, intimidated the crap out of Utah State inside the paint. And Utah State, they fixed that in this most recent game. They got 40 points in the paint. So Utah State is not incapable of fixing things like that. I mean, they are a high-level interior scoring team. Despite not having tons of length, they rank among the best in college basketball in finishing in the paint. Like, getting 40 points in the paint is like the norm for them, or, thereabouts. At least 35 plus. So the way they didn't score well in the paint, again, their 2-point percentage against Nevada last time out was 36%. They shot 44% from three. So, and of course, they also shot 12 of 19 on free throws, so they weren't helping themselves in that regard. But yeah, Mason and MJ combining for only 19 points. Well, they had 44 last night. I don't know if they're going to go for 44 combined again, but if they can get themselves 35 between them, that's obviously a massive step up. You get a few extra points from Adlin, Zach Keller.
Tucker.
Tucker. Carson off the bench, Colby King. Colby King had 16 points in that game. Like, him and Drake Allen probably aren't going to repeat their 16 and 17-point performances, but as long as you can get an overall increase in the points in the paint category, that's going to make up for not hitting, 15 three-pointers. But we've seen the Aggies' ability to bounce back, even against, when a team does it once, they struggle to do it twice. Again, nobody swept the Aggies except for UNLV, and even then when they got a third crack at them, they fixed the problems that showed up in those first two matchups. So the Aggies are going to know. They're going to, they're going to have prepared for a lot of this. They're going to be walking through a lot of the things today. And since there's a decent amount of carryover from UNLV, again, they needed to dominate the paint against UNLV. They're going to need to do it again today, even though there can be some different faces on the other side. They're going to be able to focus on those same key principles of score in the paint, good ball movement, force turnovers on defense. And so there's a lot of carryover in that respect, and so I think they'll be able to make up for what they didn't do in that second matchup against Nevada. Yeah,
in their first meeting, Utah State only allowed 62 points to Nevada. In their second, it was, 80?
Yeah, in Nevada.
So wide difference between the two outcomes and how Utah State defensively defended Nevada and what they were trying to do. So they've got to rediscover what they did in that first game in their first meeting.
Yeah, they sent them to the free throw line 27 times. Nevada also made more three-pointers than they typically do. They made 10 of 19. So ideally that's also not going to present itself, but they also, went 15 of 30 on two-pointers. So the two-pointers, the ability to get volume two-pointers, to get volume free throws, and they also hit a lot of those free throws, that hurt way more than Nevada going slightly above their three-point percentage.
All right, got to take a time out here in the Full Court Press. We'd love to hear from you, your thoughts about this matchup tonight. Utah State and Nevada squaring off. Pre-game coverage on our sister station, KVNU. We'll start at 6:30. Tip-off at 7:30. But for you, who needs to be the X factor tonight for the Aggies to advance to the Mountain West Conference Championship game? Let us know on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line, 435-339-0321. Hey, indoor air in our area can be up to 5 times drier than the outdoor air, especially during the dry winter months. We haven't really gotten into the wet spring yet, so it's still a factor. Dry air does keep dust and allergens floating longer, sending them deeper into your lungs, making sickness more likely. Mountain Valley Heating and Air, they can install high-efficiency steam humidifiers that use a gallon of water with no waste, and it improves your indoor air quality. You can call them today to get a free in-home air quality assessment. It's 435-753-5170. That's Mountain Valley Heating and Air. So looking at Utah State and Nevada squaring off later on tonight in the Mountain West Conference semifinals in Las Vegas at the Thomas and Mack. Excited to see how much bigger the Aggie contingency grows. It was a pretty good crowd.
Yeah, it was already good for a Thursday.
For Utah State. But
Thursday at noon.
People maybe making the trip down to be here tonight to cheer on Utah State as the number of teams involved diminishes, but the number of fans for each team grows. That's what makes it fun. You've got 3 really good traveling fan bases here tonight. It'll be interesting to see if Nevada has more fans who show up for their team in the semifinal. But let's get to the Young Power Sports of Logan text line and answer some questions there that kind of leads us into one of the topics today. 2603 texting in saying, Aggies looked good yesterday, need to come out strong again tonight. Totally agree.
Yep.
And then also K-State, that's Kansas State, filled their head coaching position today. His name isn't Calhoun. However, Cincinnati fired their coach. Should we be nervous?
Yeah, so since Kansas State went after Belmont's head coach, I forget his first name, something Alexander. I completely, it's like something with an S, I think. I'm thinking Sean Alexander. That was a running back for the Seahawks way back when. And see, I'm now confusing Cincinnati, Kansas State. Kansas State fills their head coaching position. And Aggies kind of breathed a sigh of relief as they go to bed last night. And then this morning, the news breaks that Wes Miller will be out at Cincinnati. So now I keep going back and forth. They're not even similar, and I can't get them straight.
It was Casey Alexander, by the way.
Casey Alexander, there we go. Casey Alexander, the former, soon-to-be former, or maybe now former Belmont head coach. A lot of success there with Belmont. Those just kept getting upset in the conference tournament. That seems to be his conference tournaments are his kryptonite. Which you go to Kansas State. You don't have to win your conference tournament there. You just got to have a good regular season, which is what he's specialized at.
Right.
But yeah, Cincinnati parting ways with Wes Miller, and that is one of really 2 head coaching vacancies that I think Aggie fans have been really concerned about. Because while any power conference job opening up, Calhoun's name was being attached. There were Syracuse podcasters who I was seeing posts saying, "We want to get Jared Calhoun. He'll come here, right?" And it's like, I don't know about that.
Not really a connection there. If you were to go there, it's just chasing money and opportunity.
Yeah, and that's Jared Calhoun's a little smarter than that, and it's going to take the right situation, in terms of resources, but also just personal connections, because that's a lot of coaching and also players. Like, you'd be surprised just how much. I mean, it's a lot like the real world. Connections tend to make, it's how I got this job. I knew Eric, so at least that got my foot in the door.
It's not necessarily who you know; it's who knows you.
Yeah, right? That's the thing. So it's who you know, and with resume attached. I didn't get this job out of nowhere, but So with Jared Calhoun, obviously he's got his resume, and so Cincinnati will be after him, and he's got the connections to the state, to the university. So, that's the kind of thing. With Rob Nielsen, at Utah State, he didn't just go chase any job. It required a program like BYU to go after him. He wouldn't have left for anywhere except BYU. Jared Calhoun's not going anywhere except for, maybe a place like Cincinnati, and that's why you're scared for that, because he's turned down multiple power conference jobs at this point. But does he turn down Cincinnati? And I got to be honest, it doesn't look good.
Yeah, so I've been rooting for Cincinnati's success.
Yeah.
They because there was a stretch there in the kind of near the end of the season, not totally, but maybe the middle of the season, where they were having a rough patch. And these reports were coming out that it was a hot seat, that they might move off of Wes Miller. But then he started winning some games. I thought, okay, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
They get into the tournament. Their Big 12 tournament. They took somebody into overtime in the second round just the other day. It was UCF, losing to UCF in overtime. And so he's not officially fired now. I guess they're trying to keep him under contract through April 1st. They can save like $1 million or $5 million by holding on to him for a few more weeks, because his buyout goes from 9.9 to 4.5 or something like that.
Yeah, something to that effect. Because that's a lot of these contracts. The new year of a contract will begin, usually right at the turn of
after
March
the
and
end
April.
of the NCAA
like
tournament.
Jared Calhoun's contract, basically turns at the end of April. Although his extension made it almost sound like it changed to March 26th, but I think it's still April 1st is when that's when his buyout amount goes down. Though from some sources I've seen, I tried doing the math myself, and I may have gotten it wrong because I saw other people who were smarter than me. They did the math and got different numbers. So I'd probably go with their numbers as opposed to mine, since they know what they're doing. But if their numbers are correct, then it actually doesn't go down by a ton. It's still over $4 million. But yeah, with Cincinnati potentially saving $5 million-ish in buying out Wes Miller by waiting to officially end his contract on April 1st, then that's money they can then turn to buy out. I know there's some Aggie fans who are like, it's like $8 million to, buy out the current coach and Jared Calhoun, and then you got to pay the salary, and it's like Cincinnati's budget is in the $100+ million range. That's a lot of money, but that is money that they're willing to eat when they can then sell to the fan base. Because that's the job of ADs, is they have to make these moves because otherwise they're out of a job.
Yeah, their jobs are on the line.
And
too.
they also can't fundraise. If fans are upset, they don't send money. If they don't believe in the head coach, they don't donate money. Their big donors don't send any money. But if you can say, hey, look, we're trying to turn things around, but we need $8 million. And there's a sucker born in every, there's a sucker in every donor pool, and they're willing to shell out that money, and they're rich enough to be able to pay that, and so they're able to, buy out $8 million and also commit the kind of NIL resources that Jared Calhoun is going to want, because it's been pretty clear that he's been picky and choosy about what, step up he's going to take, because he doesn't want to step up and be like, Danny Sprinkle or Craig Smith and go to some bottom tier, program, or a program that's currently in the bottom tier. I know Utah once upon a time was a lot better, but he wants a program that's going to be able to have the resources that he can use to go build a winner. Take Cincinnati back to what they used to be in the mid 2000s, where they were routine, 1 seed, top 5 seed type of team, where they were an elite program back when they were in the Conference USA. The kind of success they haven't been able to replicate in the Big 12, but if they commit enough money,
American.
Weren't they? Oh, maybe I'm confusing them with Memphis. Yeah, they're in the American. Excuse me, they were in one of the mid majors.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were able to have that success in a mid major conference. They haven't been able to replicate that in the Big 12, but put enough resources in and have a guy like Jared Calhoun, who's been working with a program like Utah State, a middling level in the Mountain West, and he's winning the Mountain West. And so theoretically, could you do something like that in the Big 12? I don't know, but Calhoun might. I don't want to say that he's already gone, but just laying out the situation that if Calhoun's going to leave for a job, this is the situation that it could look like.
There have always been 3 programs, at least 3, that I've been always kind of nervous about for Utah State with losing Calhoun. One of those was West Virginia, because he was on that staff.
Yep.
Very formative years for him. They had an opening last year. They were pursuing him. They chose a different way, or he turned them down. We don't know exactly how that went down.
Yeah,
but
we've heard rumors to both sides there.
The position got filled, and he came back. So move West Virginia off the board. The other 2, Cincinnati and Ohio State. Jared Calhoun is an Ohio native. He is a Cincinnati native grad specifically.
Yep.
And his mentor, Bob Huggins, coached there. And so he's very familiar with Cincinnati. deep roots there, family connections. Now they're in the Big 12, been in the Big 12 the last couple of years. So an opportunity to play in the best basketball conference in America. The third school that has always kind of been on my mind is the at-risk program, if a job opening comes up, is Ohio State. For a lot of the same reasons. They're in Ohio. He's an Ohio native. Certainly they have a higher profile than Cincinnati does.
Yeah, got a bit more money to roll into.
A lot more resources.
Got
more pressure.
More of that football money comes, trickling down to the basketball program.
Yes. But if Ohio State was having a middling season or a couple of seasons and Jared Calhoun continues to improve his profile, I could see them moving off of their coach just to go get him. Now, Wes Miller was already kind of on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Could they have gone a little bit longer with him? Because he only was there 5 years, 3 when they were in the American, 2 in the Big 12. Could they have stuck with him and given him a little bit longer of an on-ramp to figure it out in the Big 12? Maybe. But they know Jared Calhoun is a Cincinnati native. He went to University of Cincinnati. And there is already a bunch of fans saying, we got our next guy.
Yeah.
Look at the success he's having. Why are we messing around? Let's go get him before somebody else snatches him up.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing where I was talking about, where you're trying to ensure that donors keep donating. Because sure, you could try and trot out another year of Wes Miller, and who knows? Maybe he turns it around, but he would have to do it likely with less resources, because there'd be less donors, less enthusiastic donations. Maybe some big-time donors are like, well, I'm not going to do it this year because I don't trust, Wes Miller. And so that maybe ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy where you can't get the donations for the NIL and for the revenue sharing. And so for athletic directors, they've got to be able to sell the fans and the donors in the program. And so while, yes, theoretically you could try and trust your coach one more year, but it's a bigger selling point for the athletic director to just move off of him, go to Jared Calhoun, and then don't risk, Jared Calhoun staying another year at Utah State, raising his profile even more, and say Ohio State has a down year next year, where they're kind of sitting and being a little middling right now. I think they're on the bubble or just maybe safely inside the bubble to make the NCAA tournament this year. So, they're not crashing and burning, but, if they decide to move off, Calhoun probably takes Ohio State over Cincinnati. So you don't want to risk your native son going, up the road and going to Ohio State instead of you. So Cincinnati can jump on the ball now, have to eat a little bit more dead salary and, also a higher buyout with Jared Calhoun. But it could very well end up being the right move for Calhoun. And again, that's why it's so worrying, is that it makes a little bit too much sense for Calhoun to make that move, where it didn't make a whole lot of sense for him to go to, made 0 sense for him to go to Syracuse or, or Kansas State.
Yeah.
Or some of these other programs where it's we want Jared Calhoun, half of these power conference schools, we want Jared Calhoun, he's at the top of our wish list. And it's no, there's 2 or 3 schools that are really at the top of Calhoun's wish list, and he didn't really seem inclined to leave Utah State for any of them, except for one like Cincinnati. Now, we'll see if Calhoun turns down Cincinnati, because there is a reality of Cincinnati right now, not being one of the top Big 12 programs. I don't think this comparison fits particularly well. It's like a glove that's a size too big. But it's kind of like Utah in a sense, where I mentioned all of the great success Cincinnati has had. They've had theirs more recently than Utah, and they are undoubtedly in a better position than Utah is in the Big 12. But if you remember those, Big 12 coaching rankings that Field of 68 did, where they polled the coaches in the Big 12, and Cincinnati was in the middle of the road. So there is reason to believe that Jared Calhoun could look at Kansas State or look at Cincinnati and be like, okay, yes, alma mater and, more resources, but is it a top program in the Big 12? Can they compete money-wise with an Arizona, Houston, Kansas? I'm staring at Eric Skrinks. He's got the Big 12 standings pulled up.
Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State, Texas State,
Tech.
BYU, and BYU is spending $29 million, $15 million on a roster. And if they don't get injured to heck and back, they're obviously a a team that's really tough to beat. So, like, well, Jared Calhoun can make more with less. He might be he'd be way more outclassed money-wise at Cincinnati compared to the rest of the Big 12 than he would be at Utah State. Because, like, he's $1 million or so behind San Diego State and Grand Canyon and, UNLV in New Mexico. He'd be $5 million behind Arizona and Houston and BYU.
At least.
Like, can he make up that difference?
Yeah, because Cincinnati, they've had some basketball success. They've also had basketball controversy over the years. They've had coaches get fired. They've had some players that have done some shady things in their history. But they've only been in the Big 12 for 2 years. So it's not like they have that Big 12 money like a lot of the teams in the Big 12 have.
Yeah.
They're trying to get there, but they don't have that. They have to compete against that, but they don't have that same amount of money or resources like a lot of the other teams in their league have access to. So it's still an uphill battle going there, but I get it. If they come calling and they've got a big pile of money and they can illustrate a plan that makes sense to him, who wouldn't want a chance to go home and coach for your alma mater and where you're from? I can't begrudge the guy for taking a long look at that and choosing to do that.
Yeah.
It appears to be he's the guy on the top of their wish list, but I don't know what other candidates are out there that they may be looking at.
There's probably some decent ones, but again, who's the easiest candidate to sell to your fan base? Because it almost, given that
Bring
we're talking
him home,
yeah,
that's the guy that makes the most sense.
Yeah. And when I say sell, it kind of almost literally is that, because it's donors then literally buying into the program. We're using these buying in and selling this thing. And those are almost literal terms because, again, it all comes down to this zero-sum game with money. We got to take a break here on the Full Court Press. We'll take a quick jump away, and then we'll be back. We'll get back to the Mountain West Tournament. We'll stop talking as much about the possibility of Calhoun leaving. We got a game tonight.
Yes.
And potentially a game tomorrow. So we'll get back to that here on the Full Court Press.
Cache Valley's largest and most complete power sports service shop. They're now open in Logan. It's Young Power Sports in Logan. They service all brands, all makes, all sizes. So it's motorcycles, SUVs, ATVs, UTVs, and more. No guesswork, no shortcuts. Their trained technicians make sure they're doing it right. They fix it right the first time. Can-Am, Kawasaki, Polaris, Ski-Doo, they can handle all the different brands. You can get in and out, done right, guaranteed. And they can even pick it up at your place, and delivery available within a 25-mile radius. So get back out on the road, out on the trail, or back out on the track fast. Schedule your next service now by calling 755-7111. That's 755-7111. That's Young Power Sports Logan and their incredible new big service department.
They sponsor our Young Power Sports Logan text line, 9-5 on that text line. Pointing us out saying, we all know Jason was slipping Eric's and Benjamin's to put his resume on top of the candidate list. That's made Eric net worth hit just over $1 million. That equals Jason on the full course. Yeah, I helped Eric fund his third vacation home.
Right, yes, yes. Little did you know.
The most unbelievable part about that is me having Benjamin's to use on bribe money.
Yeah. Or me having 3 vacation homes. Yeah. No, Jason was very qualified. That's why you definitely rose to the top. But, yeah, Utah State faces Nevada tonight, Mountain West Conference tournament semifinals. We've talked about the Aggies and the Wolfpack. X factor for tonight for the Aggies. For me, I mean, it's kind of weird to use Mason Fosliv as an X factor. But the last time these two teams met, he only had 10 points. He really struggled. He was tight. He just couldn't hit shots. He has to have that same approach yesterday, tonight. And if he does, I love Utah State's chances of playing again on Saturday. And there may be a bit of a cop-out because, yeah, he's the conference player of the year. But where he has kind of struggled in the matchup against Nevada, if he could be the X factor that determines how Utah State plays. He really seems to be the driving force of the team. If he's on, if he's aggressive, everybody else tends to follow. If he's tight, if he can't make shots, it's kind of infectious. So for me, the X factor tonight is Mason Fosliv.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't call a guy an X factor all the time, I mean, maybe he shouldn't be Mountain West Player of the Year. But, yeah, you look at when the Aggies beat Nevada last time, he had 26 points. You know, he went 9 of 14 from the field. He got to the he was able to get into the paint, was 7 of 10 on 2-pointers, where he struggled a ton in the next matchup, where he was 3 of 7. And, you know, couldn't hit his free throws in the second game either. And, yeah, he only has 10 points. So, yeah, I don't think it's too much of a cop-out. Maybe in terms of what you call an X factor, an unexpected. But, like, he's going to be that. And rotations may be a little bit tighter, or at least the offense may be a little tighter, where you need your big guys to get points, just like they did against UNLV. Sure, they got points from other guys, but 44 daggone points from MJ and Mason certainly didn't hurt.
Yeah.
So you go to either of those two guys, but to me, I look at the big line, and I'll look at basically Adlan El-Amin and Tucker Anderson. Whether Adlan plays all of the minutes kind of at that position, because Calhoun wants that 6'9", you know, power forward, that, you know, but versatile and can also stretch the floor. Like, yeah. You know, the thing that Carson Templin kind of can do, but he generally only wants to have Templin playing at the 4 if, like, he needs to have 2 bigs on the court, and they're not going to want to run that lineup as much against Nevada. So he's going to have a guy like Adlan, but he's also, if Adlan doesn't have it, then he's having Tucker fill some of those minutes. So whether it's one or both of those guys, those 2 players need to be on point because they're going to be the ones matching up a lot against Elijah Price. They're going to be guys that have to make a big impact in rebounding, interior defense, playing the passing lanes well, being able to make an impact inside the arc, but also outside when you're making sure you stay in front of the ball so guys don't get downhill going into the paint. Because when teams have done that against the Aggies a bunch of times, they're in trouble. Of course, that's usually the case for anybody, but especially the Aggies where they don't have a great rim protector to kind of erase those mistakes. Yeah. You know, where some teams have that luxury, the Aggies don't have that luxury. So they more especially have to be able to stay in front of the guys and keep them out of the paint. And while that does require everybody, I think guys like Adlan and Tucker, both offensively and defensively, and especially rebounding, they've got to be on point in that regard. because that's where Nevada can end up applying some pressure points to be able to pull off things they did last time to get a win. In a bunch of those different things to be able to control the paint.
Yeah, I like that. If Adeline Elamine, Tucker Anderson, if those guys have solid performances, that bodes well for a lot of other things for Utah State. But if you got a different opinion on that, who you think who could be an X factor, who needs to be an X factor for Utah State, let us know on the Young Power Sports of Logan text line 435-339-0321. And then let's look at the other game going on tonight, New Mexico and San Diego State, a de facto NCAA tournament elimination game.
Yeah.
Which of those two teams would you rather have Utah State face on Saturday, assuming the Aggies get past the Wolfpack?
It's an interesting question, and we got to take a break. So let's answer that on the other side of this break. We'll get to that here on the Full Court Press.
Hey, welcome back. It's a Full Court Press. Eric Franson, Jason Walker, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, getting you ready for Utah State and Nevada. They square off tonight. 6:30 pregame on our sister station, KVNU, with J.D. Walker, Stockton Jukes, and Jalen Moore. Tip-off at 7:30. They got the first game of two games tonight in the Thomas and Mack. And the later game, San Diego State and New Mexico. Let's assume Utah State takes care of Nevada. It's not a guarantee, but we'll assume, for the sake of this argument, that the Aggies win. Who would you rather face on Saturday? Who are you going to be rooting for, kind of just to see who the Aggies could face on Saturday in the championship game?
I think it's hard to root against the team that you did beat twice in the regular season. Of course, that logic doesn't flow entirely well, considering the Aggies just beat UNLV, a team that had beaten them twice and then got blown out by 20 when the Aggies finally locked in and got some revenge. But I think the difference there is that Utah State was a better team on paper than UNLV and somehow managed to lose twice. The Aggies are a better team on paper than New Mexico, and I think they still match up decently well against the Lobos, where Jake Hall is a player that they are, as long as they're not screwing up the scouting report, they're able to lock in and defend. And Tomislav Buljan, despite the fact that he really should kind of scare Aggie fans more, he's really struggled to be an impact player against the Aggies. You know, like him and Drew Fielder, like those two were like, Drew Fielder was supposed to be like, I looked at him preseason and then even before their first match, I was like, this is a guy who could wreck the Aggies. He's a stretch big, he's a skilled player, can finish inside. And then he was basically a non-factor in both of those games. Bullion, I wasn't as locked into him preseason, but once you get going, you realize, oh yeah, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
He was the exact kind of player. Lots of offensive rebounds. And he did do a lot of offensive rebounding against the Aggies. But still largely a non-factor. And heck, choked in the clutch against Utah State in the Spectrum. So despite the fact that there are some aspects on paper where New Mexico can struggle, the Aggies haven't let it bother them. They're better on paper. They've shown they're better on the court in two different games. So you'd imagine that New Mexico is the overall better matchup, though it's not like San Diego State is this terrifying force if that's who the Aggies had to face if they get by Nevada today.
Yeah, it's that you beat a team twice. You seem to match up well against them. Why don't you root for them to be the matchup? But we've also seen, and the standard phrase is, it's tough to beat a good team 3 times.
Yeah.
It's not impossible, but it can be a challenge. But San Diego State poses some logistical, structural, the way that their roster is constructed, challenges for the Aggies.
Their defense is really good, and elite defenses that can travel well, and it tends to travel well, are really good in these tournament environments. It's why San Diego State, even when they're their favorite or sometimes when they're the underdog, it's why they continue to perform well in the conference tournament.
Yeah, and they just beat Utah State just a few weeks ago, 89-72. Utah State really struggled in that matchup.
Yeah.
Aggies, they matched up well against New Mexico, took care of them both in their 2 meetings, 86-66, and then the last one was closer, 94-90. We just saw that just barely just last week. But there are a lot more things I like about Utah State and how they match up against the Lobos than they do the Aztecs. And I think metrics-wise, for the net, I think it looks better if Utah State beats New Mexico than San Diego State.
Aren't they about the same?
They're really close.
I could have sworn there have been like 45 and 46
they're
basically
they're
all
both
year.
in the 40s. So it's not dramatically different, but you are beating a team that's closer to being in the tournament than the other.
New Mexico is 45, San Diego State is 46.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
I mean, technically you're not wrong, but like
it doesn't matter. Yeah, so all other things considered, I just think I agree with you. I think Utah State matches up better against New Mexico. It's tough to beat a good team 3 times, but they've got some talented players, but they are younger players. At this point, they're sophomores. They're not really freshmen anymore. But the way Utah State gets after things defensively and can still score, I think Utah State's got a better chance against New Mexico than they would San Diego State. But it all depends on which Utah State team shows up.
Yeah.
If it's a team that showed up yesterday, I don't care who it is.
Yeah.
Aggie's going to look great.
Yeah, nobody in the conference is stopping the Aggie team from yesterday if that's the one that shows up.
Yeah.
It's 5662 on the Young Power Sports Logan text line saying matchup better against the Lobos. And we're definitely in agreement there. And then also a compelling argument here. Let's have an all-pack championship game, though, just for Gloria.
Just for Gloria. I love that. Thanks. We're going to take their hardware and goodbye. The best teams are out the door.
It was like yesterday when I took that picture of Cam Walker and Gloria Navarez out there on center court. Did you see that one?
Oh, yes.
Where, like, I managed to take it at the perfect time where Cam had the cheesiest look on his face.
Yeah,
like, that's not
the bull singing sign.
That's not what he looked like the entire time he was standing out there, but I hit the camera button at the exact right time. But that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you tomorrow or next week.